Regular public. So we'll call the Public Safety Committee meeting to order for June 26, 2024, time is 6 p.m. And have you noted the roll, Chief? Yes. All right, the roll is noted. And looking at the minutes, do I have a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting?
I have one small change underneath.
We need a motion first.
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Motion to approve.
And is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, any changes, any just further discussion?
The new ambulance is scheduled to arrive in January 25, not 24.
Okay. So we'll
change.
We'll note that, make that change. Everyone's okay with the change? All right, all those in favor? Aye. And the motion passes. Seeing no appearances, there's no unfinished business. New business, discussion and action on proposed 2025 capital budget for Monona Fire EMS. Now, normally, we're not going to do a second read on this, so we're going to discuss and then hopefully come to some resolution on this evening. So, Chief.
All right, good evening. Jim, I apologize if I say something that you don't understand. Please let me know and I'll do a better job of explaining because you don't have it in front of you. Okay. So start with fire protection, mainly because it's the first one in the packet. No real changes on this. The only updates on this for 25. Angela, good evening.
Good evening.
While we have a break in the action, is that Larry Reed or
Thank you.
Mary? I'm guessing it's Larry. So I can take count of roll call here. You're muted if you're trying to speak. Sorry.
Okay. For 2025, the only changes have been in dollar amounts. We just did the radio replacement project, the first part of the mobile replacement this year in 24, and based on that pricing.
I'm in. Thank you.
Got it.
Good evening, Larry.
Bye-bye.
The project is being stretched out over an additional year because the pricing is substantially higher than what we anticipated. We were supposed to get 5 this year. We got 4. So it'll be 4 more next year, 4 more the year after that, and 4 more the year after that to do the complete radio replacements on the mobiles. Normally it would go an additional year because we have 4 more radios, which would be for the new engine and the ambulance. We're going to include those in the bill. So they're not going to be part of this project. They'll come with the radios. And then in 28, that $30,000 radio replacement is our pagers being replaced. So in 2028, they'll be 10 years old. They get beat on a pretty regular basis. I'm as guilty as the rest because it hangs on my belt and it runs into everything. And so that's the 30,028. But out of the 25 projects, everything is the same. The 26,000 for PPE is 6 sets a year, which we roughly have 60 sets a year. So they're good for 10 years. So we replace 6 sets a year based on whoever expires, they get a new set a year that year. That dollar amount includes helmets, boots, pants, coats, suspenders, the full set of gear. Because helmets, boots, all that are also under the 10-year program. So all of them have to be replaced every 10 years. Years ago, you could get by with, well, that one's 11 or 12 years old. Madison College will no longer accept people coming in to train if their gear is out of date. They'll send them home. So it has to be within the 10-year date now, which we're keeping up on. We had a bunch that were out of date back in 22 due to that previous, we can let that slide for a few. And we had a big project here that year, got everything caught up, and now we're to the 6 sets a year. So that'll be a continuous thing every year for PPE replacement. Durable equipment, you'll notice I put it up by a few $100s every year because everything keeps going up in price. I have found nothing that has gone down in price, unfortunately. But that's stuff that breaks during use. We break a ladder on a call, we break a nozzle on a call, or a hose blows. Believe it or not, hose is incredibly expensive. A 50-foot piece of the 5-inch supply hose we use is $1,100 for a 50-foot piece. We carry 400 feet on a truck. So everything is expensive. The Monona Engine 4 supply and chassis volatility, that was the remainder of the original project in case there's a change in pricing on the chassis itself when they do order it. Garfield, Arkansas. And for any additional equipment that may be worn on engine 4 when we get it. So all the hose will transfer, the air packs all transfer, all the tools transfer. But if there's stuff that's either worn out or missing, that's a pool of money to order stuff when we get the truck. We actually expect not much out of that. The radios will come out of that. So far, the indications from Alliant is there is no price increase for 2025 so far. So hopefully that is a $51,000 thing we can give back to the city at the end of it and walk away with a $600,000 engine. So the only other new thing that was added in, you'll notice in 2029 is a replacement for Car One. That's our command vehicle. It's on a 15-year replacement cycle. It's a 2013. I actually pushed it by a year. And that dollar amount will actually go up. That was my estimate. I was up at the Chiefs conference last week. They actually had one on display, which was actually set up exactly how we envisioned it to be. It'll be a quad cab truck with a utility box and that sort of thing. That's it was 125 delivered. So 100,000 probably won't quite do it, but I'll adjust that as we go forward into future years. So that's it on the fire side. If anybody has any questions.
Anyone have any questions? And feel free to ask them, especially Rachel, if you have any questions at all. It's a good time. I know you haven't seen this before. Yes.
I don't think I have any questions for the fire.
And if you have any questions that come up later, just reach out. Happy to answer any questions. And I'm happy to go into far more detail. Again, if something comes up afterwards and you have questions, just reach out. I'm happy to meet up and provide more detail.
And the radios are new.
Radios will be new. Not new in this budget. They've been in the budget. They were in the budget last year. The last 3 years before that, we did all the portables. And this year, starting this in 24, we started doing mobile replacements. Right now, there's at least 4 of our radios that were hand-me-downs from other departments that got radios. And in the interest of being frugal, I took them and reprogrammed them. We've been using them, but we're finding failure starting to happen on a pretty regular basis. So most of them are approaching 10 years old at this point.
All right. Is there a motion on the proposed 2025 capital budget for the non-fire units? Welcome to approve. And any further discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. All right.
Actually, I still have to do the EMS.
Oh, I know. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Oops. I thought you finished. Sorry. That's why we're having questions. Yeah. All right. So let's, what do we do now? Actually,
He'll describe the EMS side of the house.
And we can do it. We can do it.
we'll do a second one again. We'll just consider two different budgets. Okay.
They won't let me combine my cards.
Gotcha.
So, all right, on the EMS side, on the 2025 budget year, the completion of the ambulance, this was approved last year. We split it into 2 parts. We paid for the chassis via grant last year to get it ordered. The completion of the ambulance is technically in 24, but in ordering the engine, we pushed this into 25, so we wouldn't get hit with both in a single year. So our vendor was more than willing to let us push it into 25. It'll be completed in December of this year. It'll actually make the show circuit, so we'll be at the EMS conference here in the state, probably Arrowhead up in Duluth. And then it'll get delivered the first week of February. That dollar amount has not changed. Our vendor was actually up at the Cheese conference, so it's in pre-production right now. Chief Eckloff and myself will be going down to the factory next month in Van Wert, Ohio, to sign off on the pre-engineering to get it going on the line, and it's expected to be done in December.
That's the one we pay for 2.
Yeah, over 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah, and like I say, we got lucky from the state. We got a grant to pay for the chassis, so it took $47,000 off the price for the city. Also, the next item on there, the monitor, that's also, we put that on there last year to start the cycle of replacement. So we have 3 cardiac monitors. Per FDA, they're good for 7 years in a use environment. Our oldest is a 2017, so it's actually 7 years old this year. So we'll replace, we're gonna squeeze 1 more year out of it. And,
Is this something that can be refurbished?
not with warranty, unfortunately.
Okay,
They do sell refurbished ones, but there's no warranty coverage on them.
gotcha.
So these have all been covered under warranty from the day we bought them. And as long as we maintain the PM schedule with the factory, they keep it covered under warranty. So for warranty stuff, we don't pay for parts, we only pay for labor. And we've, in a previous service, we've tried to refurbish monitors. It did not go well. We ended up spending more to fix it than we spent on buying it, so.
Gotcha, just curious.
So
Wasn't sure what expires, you know, the 7 years, blah, blah, blah.
it's under the FDA approval,
Yeah.
so even like the lift systems, anything that's patient care centered, it's generally a 7-year lifespan on it.
Okay.
Because it's in an environment that's not controlled. So hospitals that use dual monitors get 10 years out of them, because it's in an environment that's controlled. These get banged around, dropped. So that price is valid, within probably $300 on the current state bid, is where that would come off of. They're running right around 39.6, somewhere around there. So that price actually stayed the same. I added an escalator on it for the next 2 years, not knowing what's gonna happen with pricing. I can tell you in the last 5 years, they've gone up almost $10,000. So so in case anybody's interested in EMS, I'll give a little explanation. There's 3 choices. So there's 3 types of monitors you can get. There's 3 manufacturers. There's old Philips, which is now Tempus, and LifePak, which is made by Stryker. This one is 30% cheaper than the other 2. Yeah, the other 2, you're looking at anywhere from 55 to 65 for a monitor. And the problem that I don't have a problem in looking at different manufacturers, but we would have to replace all 3 of them at once. I can't have 2 different types of monitors, with my crew trying to do it at 2 o'clock in the morning. So we can all have to do that, and it would be $180,000, or do them one at a time and cycle them out, because we have a 17, a 19, and a 20 for monitors. So we'll do the 17 this year, the 19 next year, and the 20 the year after that.
So, sorry, I don't know the equipment count, but is it one per, you have one on each EMS truck?
One on each ambulance and one in the engine room.
And then when it has to be maintenance, do they send you a loaner?
If it has to be repaired, yes, they will send it, and it's actually next day air, which is, I have no idea what the cost of a 20-pound monitor being shipped next day air is. They cover all that, so they send us a loaner, we repack ours in the box, ship it back, they fix it, send it back, we send the loaner back. It's been warranty wise, it's been a pretty flawless process, and they call us every year, hey, your monitor to do for the annual maintenance and PM. They come out here and do it, they do it right in house, and so overall, the experience has been pretty good, and they're by far the easiest monitor out of the 3 of them to use. I've tried all 3 of them. They're firefighter proof for the most part. Including durability. The other 2, they have these giant touch screens that I cringe every time I see it, because all it's gonna take is getting knocked off the back of a truck or something and the screen is broken. These are fully armored and encased, and you can knock them off the back of the truck. My crew has done that before, so. The new thing on this budget is the Lucas. The Lucas 3 is our automated CPR devices. We have 2 of them, one on each ambulance. So with CPR, the problem is after the first several minutes, people get tired. So the Lucas has become a standard over the last 15 years or so. The ERs use them now, everybody's using them. And after the first 6 minutes of hands-on CPR, we switch to this. Also allows us to continue compressions while we're driving, which I've been around long enough to have done it when we didn't have automated CPR devices and you're straddling the cot, screaming down the road at 70 miles an hour trying to do compressions, and This has been a lifesaver on the EMS side. Both of ours are over 10 years old. We bought one when it first came out. And then we, to use an impolite word, scavenged one from Town of Madison when they went out of business. So both of them are exceeding 10 years in life, which I wasn't aware of till they came out and did the service on them. And the guy's like, I can't service these anymore, they're too old. So the price that's on there is a firm quote price from Stryker. There's a couple of other devices that are similar out there. Their pricing is also similar. It's all within $300 of each other. And we run into the same problem. We either have to replace both of them. So we're using the same equipment or replace one a year. So that's the only new addition on 25 and 26. Scooting to 28, because we're at that 5-year cycle. I have to put the same thing in there for the next ambulance, which is on the 5-year replacement schedule. So buying the chassis 1 year, paying for the remainder of the box the following year. That dollar amount is actually pretty firm as well. The bonus of having our vendor up at the Chiefs conference. I'll tell you that right now, competing ambulances that are outfitted the ways are running about $350,000. I would expect by 29 to be close to 400. So we're looking at a total of about 340 because I decustomized the one we're getting next year. We'll be using that same decustomized format. Chris Viernig is a wonderful human being. He designed our current ambulance and the one before it, so they're identical. Unfortunately, everything he did in the back was custom. Everything. So the 222 we're paying this year would have been closer to 315. I went through it with our vendor. We decustomized everything. Everything's still in the same place, but Chris would be like, I need this cabinet an inch narrower. I need this one an inch further out. I need this one. I need these high-end lights. We're not doing any of that. So we're trying our best to keep the cost down because the costs are. First ambulance I bought, chassis included, was $98,000. And now here it is, it's $300,000 with a 2-year lead time. So that's the new stuff in the EMS future planning anyway. And I am happy to entertain questions on this one as well.
Any questions for the chief?
I mean, from our tour, you were saying how the fire trucks have to be custom made, so they fit in the current doors.
Fire apparatus. So
Okay,
the ambulance
not the
is-
ambulance.
No, the bays are plenty big for the ambulance.
Any other questions? Seeing none. Can I entertain a motion to approve the EMS budget?
Make a motion to approve.
I'm sorry. Well,
Make a motion to approve.
gotcha. And a second? Second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Right, update on, discussion act on proposed 2025 capital budget for Monona Police and LE Communications, Chief Cheney.
We'll start with emergency communications. That is successfully in the packet. Apologize. We missed
It's my
part
fault,
5
so-
is in the packet. For 2025, no change from any of the projects. Just as a refresher of what some of these items are. So there's 2 main computers in dispatch. There's 2 consoles for our dispatchers. There's a backup console and a primary console. We do have an overlap dispatch position with 5 dispatchers that we have working. You can probably guess that there's not much overlap because of time off and sick leave and vacation, etc. However, from time to time, that second console does get used for major events. We utilize that second console. It's the administrative workstation for our assistant chief who oversees dispatch, and there's a lot of programs on that. These specific computers that we don't, instead of buying multiple licenses for the other computers, we just keep to those main computers, right? So the price of that computer that is due, because these are very high powered computers that run 24 hours a day. This project is asking for $2,500 to replace that. We have a surveillance or closed circuit system, TV monitoring system for all of the city cameras. We have access to a vast majority of them, which gets monitored 24 hours a day by our dispatchers and the officers if they're up there. So that includes parks, pavilion camera systems, the community center, our city hall. We can see who's coming and going. We have had to utilize our city cameras for security purposes and to help in solving crimes. So it's important that we have working monitors to view the footage on the cameras that are live, but it's also recorded. And so we're about due for some of our TVs that are not working right now. And we've been sort of creative in swapping out with other monitors, but we're losing our creativity here. So we're asking for additional monitors to replace the non-functioning ones. And then our large shredder, who we were trying to find the invoice on the old one. It's buried deep, but I'm sure it's there somewhere. 6, 7, 8, 9 years old for our shredder that we used back in dispatch. If we recall, a previous project was for dispatch chairs. Remember that conversation that are 12 years old? That we finally got our new chair, one of 2 that they're testing now. We got our squad car before we got this chair. But it's here, and the reason we love this chair, number one, that it's lasted that long, and I'll circle back, that's why I'm talking about this. It's because it's got a fabulous warranty and the dispatchers love them, and we want our dispatchers to be happy, of course. And they're super durable. They've lasted that so long. Same with our shredder. Our shredder did well. It served its life. It's ruined our carpet as of late because it's leaking oil that they cannot fix, right? It is also insanely loud because it's an older model shredder, and our shredder, the only space we have to keep that shredder is in our dispatch area. So as you can imagine, as dispatchers are taking calls, they're trying to listen to the police radio, service the front window. It'd be nice for them to have something a little quieter, but also keep its function, because we're having to service that shredder every time it malfunctions.
I know it's not like a huge cost, but have you looked at, Pelletary does, like lock boxes for documents and then
Yep.
shreds them?
The problem is we'd have to have a place to store that first and then hand it over. And then there's an operating cost that comes with that, which we don't have the operating budget for. Yeah, but yes, we're actually, Madison PD, I used to work at Madison, they had a very similar setup. They still had their shredders, but they also had a very similar setup. They just had more storage to sort of keep boxes, and we simply don't. Well, you did the tour. Yeah. So those are our projects, and I'll skip down because everything stays the same in our 5-year plan here. 2029 is the new year. We added dispatch radios. As most of you can recall, Motorola radios are rather expensive, but again, they're rather durable. They last a long time. Dispatch hasn't had a new radio in quite some time. And so we anticipate in 2029 that radio that they currently use, that is probably they always get the hand-me-down stuff, is about due to be replaced. Number one, the software that's currently ran on them you're not gonna be able to update it. And so we're asking in 2029 for there to be money budgeted in the capital budget for a new radio. Everything else is remain the same.
Any other questions for Chief?
Might ask holders that we do format similar to the Chiefs and hold on both items.
Okay. And so the motion would be to approve both of these.
First would be the dispatch one, which I just discussed, and then I'll move on to the budget law enforcement.
So you want to do both at the same time?
Nope.
Not individually.
Individually, just to keep
Okay.
consistent with
Sounds
some Jerry did his.
I kind of like doing it that way.
Thank you.
All right, so the motion would be then for the
Dispatch.
the dispatch.
I'll make the motion.
Sword.
Second.
All right, any further discussion on this? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the police sworn officer side of the house. We did some moving around here. The city as a whole was tasked to try to reduce our budgeting or our capital budget borrowing for 2025. And so we were asked to look inside our budgets and to see what can be reduced, what can be moved, pushed out later years. And as staff, we all sort of discussed this, that we are only generally, I think I'll comfortably speak for Jerry and I. We're coming to you with things we need. This is not necessarily wouldn't it be great, right? So these are needed items, and so you pay me to make these challenging decisions on what to eliminate, what to reduce. And I've already done that, and I'm coming to you. But it's your job, obviously, to give any recommendation to council as to what to do with that, right? So I respect your role, but I just wanted to give you that background, is that we've already sort of had internal discussions on what to move around, eliminate, look at new pricing, et cetera. So there are some changes in 2025. The original project total package request came out at $161,200. We've done some subtraction to some items we think can wait till future years. And so some of the reductions include eliminating one laptop, eliminating one modem, eliminating the rifle. As you can recall, we were replacing our department-owned rifles. We've pushed that down to future years, removing our less lethal this year, our 40 millimeter less lethal projectiles that are more accurate. We've pushed that down to a different year. However, we also added some things too. You will see that the total breakdown, I used to come here with like 10 projects. That's because the squad, I itemized a lot of things out. I'm the only department that did that. And so our city administrator gave me some advice and direction to consolidate that into a project. And that project being a new squad car. And so the squad car plus equipment listed at $98,500 is what gets all the guts, the laptop, the computer, the radios. That's all covered in that project, and the labor costs, et cetera, to install that equipment, shipping, all of that at $98,500. So instead of the sort of 9, 10, 11 projects, consolidate. Body worn cameras we still need, that's on a regular replacement cycle. Again, that's a proprietary smart move by them, that they will no longer support software for the older models, et cetera. So we need to keep those on a replacement cycle. Same with our tasers, so another less lethal option that your officers have out there. We actually found out that the current tasers that we're being equipped with, tasers no longer making next year. They have an upgraded version of that, actually a couple of upgraded options for that taser. Unfortunately, that's probably going to come at a higher cost for tasers. And there's no other option out there for law enforcement. It's the market is owned by Axon Taser. So it's
What those upgrades would be? I mean,
So one of the upgrades would be there's a model that instead of sort of 2 or 3 deployments of every squeeze of the trigger, there's a potential deployments into these probes. There's I think in upwards of 10 or maybe fewer than that, where you have, when you have subjects in the wintertime that are wearing articles of the clothing and the probe sticks to the clothing and not the person to complete that circuit, you have another option before you have to go hands-on potentially of deploying another dart. So, and if you Google it or YouTube it, some of these even make like Star Trek phaser noises, right, as warnings. So when you power it up, it gives like an electronic warning sound to that individual that you indeed have charged your taser. And the officer, of course, is giving warnings too, but it gives that warning. Our current tasers don't do anything like that. So there's a spark noise that you can make, but there's a process.
Well, some of that works. So it
Yeah.
sounds goofy.
They work.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I mean, they've helped eliminate injury to both suspect and officer in situations where officers could have used a higher degree of force authorized under law, but have opted, because of opportunity and the distance and what a variety of factors have opted to use the taser, and have saved significant injury and probably saved lives. So, and that includes your own department, like we've successfully deployed the taser over saying having to use your fist or baton or something like that to deliver an active countermeasure. And in a lot of cases, taser is presented along with lethal force in instances in which if officers didn't have the taser, they would only be left with lethal force as an option for an individual. But we utilize good sort of verbal judo is what they call it back in the day. Some good tactics, so verbal tactics to de-escalate, to try to create more time and distance. And then an opportunity presents itself to use either the taser or these less lethal projectiles. Yeah. Questions on any of those projects? We do a lot there.
The one question I have is on the operating referendum, you're putting
Mhm.
potentially new officers. So would that increase your capital spend for equipment for them?
As designed right now, no, I factored in the potential of adding a +1. So the reason I'm asking for a hybrid plug-in squad car is because my brand new wonderful squad car that doubles as our canine car currently, because we didn't used to have a backup canine car, that was just beautifully outfitted. It's sitting outside. You paid for it. You should look at it. Will no longer be my car next year because I'm planning to give that to patrol or potentially an additional officer. So I'm back to driving, for me, it's still a good car you're gonna invest in, a non-patrol vehicle. I'm still asking for a computer because I write tickets and a printer, and a radar. So this covers what we need, and it's not going to, I'm not hopefully going to come back here and ask for more money or a budget. I should make note that the ballistic shields had already been on here. However, I'm adding ballistic helmets. Sort of, I'm asking for you to allow me that option to do both, but depending on pricing. Previously, I asked for 2 ballistic shields. Those ballistic shields work wonderful, have already been deployed by your officers. Prior to that, we had been using antiquated shields that were like medieval weight, right?
75.
They were
Yeah.
incredibly heavy. It just didn't make sense. So we now have like 12-pound shields, right? That officers can easily deploy and manipulate. And we use those in situations in which there's a firearm, right? Where officers have to respond to calls involving a firearm. Or search warrants and things that are very volatile or potentially dangerous. I found out in the town of Albion incident, if you recall that horrific event where, the gentleman and the unfortunate juvenile were involved in a chase and they shot at police, and then ultimately they lost their lives at their own hands, unfortunately. But I responded to that. And I was in charge of the drone team as the chief of police who'd never flown a drone in his life, but I needed something to do, right? And your officers were some of the first people into that house where the male suspect was held up in the occupied house. One of your officers, who was the guy that kicked down the door to that house, was the only one that didn't have a ballistic helmet on. We don't have ballistic helmets for your officers. So the deputies, the state patrol that showed up, they donned their ballistic helmets. We are so behind the sort of what we should be doing to make sure our officers are safe out there. I think we're making progress with the shields, but we also need to keep in mind, and that was a wake-up call for me once I saw that video of our officer's body-worn camera, that he was very vulnerable in that regard. So, but it also includes supporting equipment for our community response team. They do our search warrants. If there's like a tactical standoff, then we contract with the county SWAT team, the tactical response team. But if there's a search warrant that we have to execute in town, that there's not as significant known threat, then we utilize our own resources for that versus calling the county. And there's a trained group of officers that go through tactical training, specialty training to make entries to do warrants. They don't have helmets. So they have shields, no helmets, and that is like sort of becoming an industry no-no for search warrant entries. So that's why you'll see helmets added onto there. And I didn't sort of piece out how many helmets because the prices will likely change. So I'm asking for that latitude of being able to determine, well, if I have this amount, how many helmets can I get for my officers and how many shields can I get?
Are you gonna be able to get enough on that?
No. So I will be asking for additional helmets and shields in the 2026 project.
I see that, yeah. Is it more important to move that up?
Ideally, I'd like to get them all at once. I just don't, knowing the state of our current, sort of the request that was been made for me to try to help reduce our borrowing. It's important, certainly. But I think that what I'm asking for will suffice with how we, for example, enter in a search warrant, how many officers are enter in a search warrant. I'm not gonna have the officer, that's on a traffic position a block away necessarily having a helmet. So we're going to utilize those resources appropriately, and then ultimately we'll be able to get everyone outfitted with their own helmet. That's the goal.
But wouldn't the cost be more if something happened?
You're absolutely right, and I mean, there's no
This
price
is
to that.
safety.
There's no
Yeah.
price to that.
And the,
So this body.
yeah, the committee could authorize that and recommend that to council to include all of them as something.
And there would be a notation made.
I would like to do that.
A second.
So the motion would then be for how many? Or to,
So the total, both the year's projects, if it's to satisfy everyone having a helmet, there being enough shields in the field. We'd be up to. And then, some of these are gonna have to be replaced in years end. You can see the 27 as for similar project and 28 as well. My recommendation is that if the request is to have every officer having a helmet in the next year's project, is to say 25,000
Instead of the 10.
instead of 10.
I know it seems like a lot, but when you think of 15,000 extra that we're gonna spend anyway, and I don't know if there's any, by purchasing more, if there's any opportunity.
Yes.
No.
where
There's
do you get these from?
there's a variety of companies. That's every company that sells a ballistic vest, which there are dozens, offers the helmets. And so we would need to test that and figure out what helmet works for which officer, because it might not be the same company, right? Certain companies, I'm gathering, because of the ballistic level, may only make certain sizes, and we have, some of us have smaller heads, some of us have bigger heads. So that might be an independent sort of. So in essence, we're not gonna be able to say, I need 22 helmets in bulk.
Gotcha. All right, so there's a motion and a second. And any further discussion on the motion? Okay, all those in favor?
I'm sorry. Honey did?
Yeah.
And who seconded?
I seconded it.
Thank you, Andrew.
And any opposed? Motion carries. All right. Moving on to update on City of Monona Emergency Operations Plan. Coaches.
This came up, rightfully so. We talked about this at the last meeting. We have a member of the committee who has careers worth of experience in this. And so we wanted to put this on the agenda just to give you the update. And the update is that the chief and I have been working on it. We've already met with our city administrator. We have a meeting this Friday. As Larry mentioned in the previous meetings, there's a lot of work that goes into these plans. And we each are sort of piecemealing and sort of looking at the total package. I'll give you an example, and I think I mentioned this before, just that reunification plan, the reunification center plan is a huge component. That's a lot of moving parts and training and designations. All of those things are just one component in that plan. that we've been working with fire on, but the library is taking a hand in. The senior center director is taking a hand in as well. So we're compiling all that and we're getting the actual paperwork together to actually put it into the document.
Do you want to explain what the reunification plan is in case some aren't?
Absolutely.
Especially public that's watching.
Absolutely. In the event of a mass casualty incident, what we've learned through history is that oftentimes, every time there's a need to reunify survivors with concerned persons, so family members, friends, whomever. And because of it is likely an active crime scene, you can't allow people into that space. And so what history has taught us is to redesignate a space if possible, or at least have a plan in place in which you can reunite survivors and concerned persons. In addition to just the reunification aspect, there's also a debriefing element that's involved in that reunification center. Debriefing in terms of mental health, so that we usually, there's plans to have a mental health provider there. There's a first aid component as well, because obviously adrenaline does something to the body in which you may not realize you were injured until the adrenaline starts to wear down a little bit. So there's a medical aspect involved, but there's also an investigative aspect involved. You potentially could have dozens and dozens of witnesses to this crime. And so there's a check-in potential interview process that's involved with the survivors as well. Unfortunately, also, as we know, people don't survive mass shootings, for example, or mass casualty incidents. And so there's a medical examiner or coroner's component as well, that is coupled with sort of the grief counseling and support mechanisms involved. So it's an accounting as to who may have been there or may have been impacted, the survivors. You're not going to get them all. In many cases, people go to the hospital on their own or find other ways to get there. Neighbors, random residents throw you in the back of a car and just go, or people find their own way home, right? And so this is for the immediacy of the events and to direct people where to go in order to be sort of assessed, assisted, potentially interviewed, and then reunited, or for that unfortunate incident in which you have the medical examiner has to make notification to the next of kin.
Thank you.
Yeah, so that's just one chapter of this very large plan that's called an emergency operations plan. And so there's a lot of sort of behind the scenes work that are still getting accomplished. And as I mentioned, the Chief McWellen, myself, and the city's emergency manager, who is our city administrator, will be meeting Friday. And that'll be your second or third meeting, just bringing together what we've been working on. But it's not going to be finalized this Friday. We still have more work to do, but I just wanted to reassure you that we have been working and talking about it. But not only that, we regularly talk in terms of weather events or community festival, for example, or the parade. We have regular discussions as to where our reunification center is going to be, who's going to staff it, what does that look like, where are casualty collection points, what does security look like, who's setting up the emergency operations center, which probably is going to be in this room. All of those things we talk through and sort of rehearse prior to the event. So it's been an ongoing, but it's important to have that on paper so that you can have a policy in which you follow, because as you know, when crisis hit, you kind of need to go to page 2 to help you sort of guide you through that process. And it also includes elements of recovery too. How does the city recover from that event? Communications plan, what does that look like? All of that. And our current plan, the meat of it is good. It's outdated and needs to be adjusted. And we're getting a lot of help from when we have previously attended meetings with Dane County Emergency Management to help sort of smooth a lot of those rough edges out that's in there. Jerry?
You said it all.
Okay.
I'm sitting here nodding, Ryan. Yeah,
That's what I was wondering, if Dane County Emergency Management and the way they do theirs, if ours would be kind of in coordination with their plans and what they're currently doing.
they should mesh.
They should and they do, sometimes too much because there's a lot of references of Dane County things that, which is sort of a cut and paste that we've identified. That need to be very Monona specific, so we've identified, I mean, we're using their model.
Okay.
Which is good, but the chief and I also attended two, I don't know if you call them courses, Jerry, but we attended two sessions. Specifically about this plan, not our plan in general, it was a variety of police chiefs and emergency managers that attended sessions. Because they were, understood that this is probably not a topic that is discussed regularly, but it should be. And they rightfully so identified a need, and several of us attended the sessions and said, yep, you're absolutely right, we need to work on this.
That's good.
Yeah, the questions.
Just a couple of comments. Dane County Emergency Management on their website. I'm sure you guys have looked at this information. There's a handbook for local emergency managers. And within that handbook, there's some general planning considerations for organizations. And it's pretty comprehensive, but it's something that a city like Monona can look at and say, this part applies to us, this part applies to us. And because you're not a really large jurisdiction, there's some things you might not consider. It sounds like you guys are doing the right thing talking to Dane County.
They've been very helpful.
Would our plan then include things like bringing in the components, different components that Dane County does for like Red Cross and all of those for the reunification of the hospitals for, working through who's where and where people go, all of that?
Yeah, I would call it more a guidebook, considerations / checklist, right? And so it's sort of like a task sheet, right? So things you should consider, deploying, right? And then they have a list of, and what we need to do is put that resource down there and make sure there's a number and name behind that resource.
Yeah.
And that's something that we've been working on, which, as you can imagine, takes some time.
But I think Dane County already has it in the meetings I was in.
Yeah, so they do, it's just, for example, what works better for us, right?
Right.
If they've listed something on the far west side, that's not gonna be relevant for us. So let's look at, and that might also prompt ideas such as, something we're considering within the police department is the underutilization of a very good hospital that's to the south of us.
Mhm.
When our downtown hospitals get full, right,
Yes.
there's Stoughton. Right, don't forget about Stoughton, and they've
It's
reminded
all
us
in
that
there,
as well, and so. Putting that in that plan is an example of what I'm talking about, where Dane County probably just lists everyone, but highlighting that as a potential option for us, right?
Any other questions, comments? All right, seeing none. Move on to any updates on the discussion on diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives and efforts.
I'll cover that topic, but did you want to?
I can cover my report.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that has been what we were directed to do by the city administrator today, and it sounds
Okay.
like council's gonna go do something similar, is
Okay.
incorporate that topic as well as sustainability
reports?
in our reports.
Okay, sounds good.
So in future meetings, I'm gonna remove that, but it is.
Okay.
Please make sure we talk about those because they're very important. I think Jerry and I naturally try to, but we might get sidetracked, right? So it's important to talk about both topics.
All right, I'll move on to reports.
All right, it's been a busy month, been a busy couple months. Reported last month that we're at full capacity with volunteers, we're actually maintaining that.
How many was that?
We're at 38 as of, yes, 38. We just got back a young lady that was on an extended leave of absence that lives in the city. Came back and would like to become active again. So we generally make exceptions for folks that live in the city, and this particular lady has been on the department for several years, so we brought her back on board. and we bringing her up to speed over the next couple of months. So with that, we are literally out of bunk space. We have no bunks for new members. So we will still do a volunteer process this fall, but it'll be for a waiting list.
Gotcha.
With
And so how many paid members do you have right now?
9
9.
full-time and 8 part-time.
Okay.
We'll lose a part-time member in early September due to a pregnancy. But we actually brought a different one online already that's getting up to speed that'll help cover the shifts that they've been covering. Our new volunteers are very energetic. Larry, we have some very energetic volunteers that are covering a lot of stuff. So for those of you that were following the Harry Whitehorse wood carving festival, that was staffed solely with volunteers the entire week. They were out there all day long, every day, and it was all volunteer. No full-time staff was used to cover that, so they take the brush truck or the ambulance out there and sit out there all day. And had a great time. Some really good PR efforts out there.
Great.
We are spooling up for the festival, which the chief already alluded to with the emergency operation plan. Larry, you'll appreciate this as well. The chief and I have, since we started here, have implemented some things that we do at Madison because they make sense. Here's our written plan. Here's what we do. If there is bad weather or if there is an event at the festival. So here's all of our staffing plans. We do the full ICS form layout for it, which details different divisions and who's assigned to what and radio communications and medical plans. It's a 35-page document that just got sent out in draft form this afternoon because we take this seriously. That we have 30,000 people here. Something bad could happen. So Chief Cheney talked about casualty collection points. We review those every year. Okay, this is where we put them last year. Should we leave them there? We actually changed it this year. We have different points that we'll do casualty collection. But it's well staffed with volunteers. We actually changed it up a little bit. We're not doing as overnights this year. So I looked at the data for the last 4 years that I've been here and the call volume doesn't support it. So when it comes to up staffing for events like this, I always look at previous year's data. Okay, we did have 2 full ambulance crews and an engine crew and all that, and we had 2 calls overnight. And the year before we might have had 1 call overnight. So this year, the majority of folks go home at 10 o'clock on the 3rd and midnight on the 4th. So once the fireworks are all done, and so we don't pay people to sleep in a place that we don't have enough room for them anyway. So overnight for both festivals, we have our full-time staffing and volunteers running the engine. So we have a fully staffed ambulance and an engine, and that's it. We have enough beds for just that.
And then just to let people know too, volunteers aren't free.
Correct.
Yes.
They do get stipends, anywhere from $30 to $45 for every 12-hour shift that they pull. Every officer is pulling shifts, and I say the new volunteers we have been outstanding. I mean, we're getting shift coverage during the day, most days, including during the week. We got 1 or 2 volunteers that are here during the day. So our coverage has been fantastic. So there's a lot of goals when it comes to these type of events, but one of the goals is being responsible fiscally. Could I just, sure I could. I mean, can I justify it? I can, but I tend to do things off of data, and data doesn't support keeping all these people here. So, and it's hard on the people too. I mean, I did 96 hours in plate armor last year, so not doing that again this year. So we have enough people trained that they're working 2 or 3 hour shifts and rotating, so people don't overheat. And I will not be here overnight 2 nights of the festival. I'm going home at midnight each night. So I'm here on the 2nd for 24, but other than that, I'm just working till midnight both nights and going home and sleeping in my own bed. But other than that, we continue to do the best we can with the station. We understand the process. We had a staff meeting with all the volunteers and everything last night. To give you an idea of attendance, so since the first of the year, and maybe the second month of the year, we brought on this cohort of volunteers, the second 6 that we brought on. we're averaging 30 to 32 people per drill, which is unheard of in Dane County right now for
That's great.
volunteers. Nobody comes anywhere close to that.
What changed?
I don't know. We brought on some really good people that are very involved, not just in the department, but in the association side. Come festival setup on Friday, we're looking to have probably 35 people out there.
Oh.
And very soft ground, so it should go very, very quickly. But firefighter night is July 3rd, where we sit at the entrance of the beer tent, and we've got 30-some people signed up for that.
Nice.
So it's like, I'm thanking my blessings right now, because we've got a bunch of very involved people that are, by all appearances, planning on being here for a while. We've got multiple folks signed up for fire classes come fall, upwards of 12 or 14 people that are going to different fire classes, and we've got a good group of full-time staff. I'm lucky, and talking to my fellow Dane County fire chiefs, there isn't a lot of luck out there right now for volunteers. Most of them are lucky to get 10 or 12 to come to a training, or even to come to a call. We had multiple calls this afternoon. Had a accident that required a second ambulance, so Medic 14 came in for that one. I had 3 volunteers waiting at the station. Fire wasn't even paged. They showed up because they saw the car accident, so they assumed there would be a fire attached, and it happened and within a private parking lot, so we didn't bring the engine out. But they were there when we got a second call, or third call if you count our mutual aid, down by Walmart. So it's nice to see, because it's not just, oh, it's whoever's on the schedule. If there's nobody on the schedule, well, you get what you get. I mean, it's me basically. And to come back and find 3 volunteers sitting here waiting is fantastic. So can't speak enough. We've got a great group of people down there. So other than that, things are going well. When we talk about diversity and equity, we actually just brought on another new volunteer, 2 new volunteers. The one, 2, they came back, and another one, 2 more women volunteers. I think we're 43% women now, 42 or 43%. But when it comes to racial equity, like I say, out of the last 12 that we brought on, we've 3 or 4 Latino folks. We've got a couple of African American folks that have joined up, and again, they're very active. They want to come and do stuff, and so I think that's our social media presence is mentioned frequently, that we're out on social media so much, and they see how busy we are. And to get a volunteer opportunity this close to Madison that's actually busy, that's what drives a lot of these folks, because Maple Bluff is struggling to get any volunteers because they sit. I mean, they have very few calls, and other than that, you have to go outside the city. So a lot of our folks live in Madison, they want to volunteer here, and they're pulling the hours. So I can't speak highly enough. I'm very happy. So that's all I've got. So Chief.
Okay. Fire and EMS do good work. We called on them 3 times, I think, in the last couple hours of my
Yes.
day to day. Okay, so we'll just piggyback on that topic, important topic of diversity, equity, and inclusion, just so that this committee is aware. I think that on the next Monday's council, the council plans to receive the DEIB report. So the ad hoc committee that's been working on sort of recommendations to help improve quality of life here, but also make it a more welcoming and accepting community. This committee's been working for years, a couple years now at least, putting together some recommendations. There's a couple workshops. I attended one just to sort of see what was going on and be available for questions. But a report is going to be, I think, presented or accepted by council. I believe it's scheduled for Monday. And I've obviously taken a chance to look and review that report as well. In terms of that report, I will say that you know, I appreciate the perspective that this committee has brought to the table and the work that they've certainly done. I think that I could have probably done a better job of informing that committee on what work the police department has already done and is doing and has plans to do in the future, because I just in reading that report, there were missed opportunities there of things that the police department is already doing that, you know, it's a message to me that I need to do a better job of educating members of the public that that work's being done. You all know it, but not everybody, as you can see, signs up to listen in on these meetings or on YouTube. So it's important that I continue to look at ways to explore to make sure that you know, we talk about the work we're doing, particularly as it relates to our community engagement, because that has been, you know, something I talked about in my application process. As one of our commissioners knows, you know, to get on board here is something that drives me and something that we've implemented here that I actually was reached out to by a member from the University of, he's going to kill me if I get this wrong, I think Virginia, as a professor that is applying for a grant, and he heard about Little Benona's community engagement requirement, quote unquote, for the officers, and how that started to, and it still is, 1 per quarter that each member of, not officers, every member of this department is required to do, and how that's evolved to the officers and dispatchers doing more than the bare minimum requirement. I know what that is. I'm not a professor or scientist to sort of point to what's making them do that, other than they're good people. And other than they've experienced that and they want to do more. But there's surely a science behind it too. And so the professor is actually the PhD, whose name escapes me, sorry, if he's watching this at some point, wants to come in, and they're actually applying for a grant to do not specifically Monona, but a variety of law enforcement agencies who are doing something like us to really expand on community engagement, looking at altruism, looking at why cops go above and beyond, and looking at some models out there that might be available. So I took it as something that's flattering, that's something that we're exploring and trying to do here. Because he, in his role, had heard about that as a professor in, I think, Virginia, I'm pretty sure, Virginia. We just hired a new, our former intern, who's a UW student athlete, was just picked up from a suburban agency. I'd like to give myself on the back because he's a Chicago kid, and we convinced him to stay here in Dane County, which is great. We don't have any vacancies, so we couldn't pick him up. I just went through another internship candidate process that involves original screening, a panel interview with the officers and dispatchers, and then you got to get through me, right? So she's going to start in the fall. She's a UW student athlete in track and field, and she is, I think, going to have a great experience here. So we still don't have a vacancy as of yet. Let's see what the referendum does, but we are constantly using that tool, number one, to educate members of the community on what it is we do, recruit them to be police officers somewhere, because we need good cops and dispatchers and public safety personnel in society, but also selfishly, I might want you to work here, right? And so that's why we participate in the internship programs, and it's not specific to UW-Madison. Our last 2 have been from UW-Madison. We've opened it up to Edgewood, to MATC. We've taken on, as several of you know, a student intern from the high school. So we keep that option open. Again, something that I wish I would have done a better job explaining to this ad hoc committee, because I think that that's something that is noteworthy, of something that we're trying in an effort that we're making. So I am a sitting member of the Law Enforcement Leaders of Color Collaboration. We just had a meeting this afternoon, and which topic of discussion was gun violence in the Madison area. And Dr. Barnes from the Monona Police, Madison Police was there. Other chiefs were there. Community pastors were there, et cetera, from the Madison area. And that community in which I've been part of for 6 years, I think now, we have some very challenging discussions about race, about trust, et cetera. they've allowed me in my new role as the Monona chief to continue on as a sort of standing member, but I'm also the Dane County Police Chief's president, so I sort of wear two hats in that role. But we engage in good discussions about what Monona can do better, and what police in the area can do better. And last couple meetings, I'll be candid with you, the feedback hasn't been critical. So, and not to say that means that we're doing everything right. It just means that I believe that we're sort of on this path of trying to do better, right? And trying to really engage communities of color, even though we've had our challenges, right? So, and I can appreciate that. All right, and I'll say that Law Enforcement Leaders of Color group is a collaboration with not only, of course, law enforcement communities of color, but it is organized by NAACP, Dane County, and then the United Way. Renee Moulton, so one person. Let's see. In terms of something I talked about at staff today, Madison Police is going to be, and I think they already published their annual report from 2023. And as I think I've talked about here in previous meetings, I've certainly talked about it at council. It's important for me to be aware of our surroundings because that impacts us. What happens on the other side of the street impacts us and vice versa, right? And I think the theme from our colleagues and former employers is going to be crime is down, right? We've already heard some of that. And in, I'm a data person, and looking at the data at Madison PD in their 2023 report, and this is not a dig, I'm just sort of speaking in terms of reality. It is not down according to the data. There are some promising things that are trending upward in Madison. However, there's still some significant challenges according to the Madison Police data, to include and I have a list, bear with me, okay? Because I think it's important for you to understand some of the challenges that we're also facing, because what I would consider as sort of overlapping sort of crime, where it's not technically happening in Monona, but we're encountering the very same individuals on traffic stops or on what I would consider small retail thefts that have been involved in some of these significant incidents in Madison. So what has increased from 2022 to 23 in Madison, according to their annual report, sexual assaults, stolen property, homicides, OWI, battery, animal cruelty, which is all of this, trespassing, which speaks to some of the transient population challenges that East Side particularly is experiencing, which several of you were engaged in discussions on median safety ordinance, the concerns I had. So the data shows that that's increased from 2022 from 592 incidents to 850 incidents. Now, what I think we've heard from my colleague, again, not a dig, is that, weapons offenses are down. We've hadn't had a shots fired in 5 weeks, I think is the term that was used in a press conference prior to the mass shooting that happened downtown. Was that in 2022, according to their report, the weapons violations were 318. They're documenting that there's now been a decrease from 2022 to 2023. So 2022 is 318, 2023 is 311. So it's down 7 incidents. So
Well, that's impressive.
to my point is we're still seeing a level of violence and yeah, no. Yeah, if you didn't catch it, all those little things like that. That won't be properly reflected in the notes, but I'm just gonna make sure. So the issue of concern is, you all know, we are a small but mighty police department here that is surrounded by the second largest city in the state that has these very significant challenges. And when I started, Mark, when you started Madison PD, how many cops were there? Best guess.
Commissioned.
Commissioned, yeah, sworn.
Like over 200.
Yeah, okay, and that was what year, Mark? You didn't tell me.
1990.
Okay, 1990, you didn't hear, 1990, Mark says that there were a couple hundred cops. When I started in just after 2001, there were just about 400. So in the high threes, just about 400. According to the 2023 annual report from Madison PD, there are 516 sworn police officers there and 90, I didn't write the number down, but there are 90 something support staff, right? It's 516 cops, right? The reason I bring that up is my number one complaint, rightfully so, because we're continuing to try to work on it, is speeding and traffic in Monona. I have myself included, there are 21 of us in the city of Monona. We share a major thoroughfare with the city of Madison, that is Monona Drive. We share a part of 51. We share the Beltline, okay? We share Broadway even technically, if you think about it. Broadway partly is theirs too. They have 5 traffic officers for the entire city of Madison, 5.
And how often do they get to actually perform traffic duties?
And that is their full-time job.
Okay.
And so the challenge is that I've not experienced them on Monona Drive or any Madison officer doing traffic, but I'm sure there have been, right? My officers and I just not have experienced it. The same with Broadway and 50. So my issue is I'm not complaining. I'm just saying that we have the burden of addressing the shared thoroughfare because our colleagues, frankly, and I'm not blaming them, they are having to address other significant issues, right? And where they're choosing to prioritize is not necessarily traffic on the east side. And that's just me talking, and I'm sure if Dr. Sean Barnes was here, he'd give a complete, total different version of that. But that is just from my perspective. And so what I'm trying to do is work better with not only Madison, but some of our other colleagues, such as the State Patrol, who just did an aerial operation in which we were a part of, right? Along with several traffic stops. They only did it for an hour and a half and got like dozens of traffic stops. We team up regularly with the Dane County Sheriff's Office to do enforcement, and Dane County deputies, as you know, can go anywhere in the county. So we bring them inward when we can as well. But the officers are out there doing the work that they can too. We need to do more. We will continue to try to do more, but 2 officers per shift is what our staffing allows. And our officers were out with fire because we called them on calls, or they were out in crashes with fire because of calls. They were at Walmart, they were at a mental health call. An officer just did a conveyance to the hospital on a mental health issue. So it's the message is
That's in a probation office over by Raywood.
yeah, saw them by the Walmart area over there. So the message is that we can continue to do more. I'm all about continuous improvement and looking at ways to use our resources the best in which we're able. But I think it's important for me, and I need to sort of cheer on my troops here, that I think they're doing a pretty darn good job. And that when I look at our data, I can honestly say the numbers are going down from the crime that's happening here in Monona. And so we just published our 2023 report before Madison did. So it's not a rebuttal.
You don't have any sort of
It's not a
rebuttal.
rebuttal.
Nothing. No feelings.
I learned most of what I know from Madison. I will always have love for Madison. Burglaries, which, think about that crime itself, that you lose so much when your home is invaded, right? Your sense of security and privacy, all of that. We have way too many, but they went down from 13 to 7, okay? And a lot of that is attributed in our monthly reports. We document how much directed patrol we do. That's dedicated patrolling that the officers log because they're actively looking for suspicious persons, vehicles, et cetera, that are like, walking through in between houses or, garage doors that are up and it's late at night. So maybe that's a ring on a doorbell that the cops do. So we've logged dozens and dozens of hours of directed patrol the cops want to do that because the job is to prevent crime, right? But at their boss's direction too, right? Lieutenant Legal and Assistant Chief Duman and all the sergeants that are making sure that the work is being done. So burglary counts down. Here's where it's up, where we have a little challenge with, it went from 209 to 232 is retail theft, right? With this wonderful thing called and Menards and Kohl's and it's hard to get a handle on that with such a small police department. And we don't control business models, we don't control loss prevention efforts. That has been challenging, but we are working with them. And when you look at data from 2020, where we had 297 retail theft complaints, yeah, we are kind of down. But according to last year, to be fair, we are up from 209 to 232. Which is a lot for a city our size. So when you look at our FBI crime data, it's gonna show, wow, property crime is through the roof. This is technically property crime. Right? So when you go on Zillow and you click that link and you show the percentage of crime, and I think it was actually brought up in a debate. I don't know if you
Yeah,
call it
someone said it
debates,
was
but
the highest property
you were
crime.
part of that, and it wasn't you.
No.
But somebody, one of your competitors.
The highest property crime city in Wisconsin.
Yeah,
Yes.
right. Well, because we have the largest retail establishments in a city our size, right? So it is what it is, but it's something we're continuing to address. That in and of itself is down, right? So you think about somebody stealing your bicycle or somebody stealing off your front porch, that is down. I'm almost done, I promise. Our battery offenses are up. From 7 to 14, they doubled in offenses. And a lot of it is attributed to, unfortunately, domestic violence. That's considered a battery offense when you batter a spouse. And we have been addressing some issues with our the transient population who, you know, rightfully so, because we have wonderful parks are open to the public, but we address behavior and disturbances in our parks as well from persons who, you know, who are occupying spaces in our parks.
Those battery numbers seem kind of, just in my opinion, seem kind of low anyway. For a city this size, 14.
Right, and this is the whole year.
None of them are good. I'm not.
No, they're not good.
But it's,
It's a
that
50%
speed seems pretty low.
Yes, and that's a stat. It's a 50% increase. And we've had 7 in 2022.
I'd expect a higher number.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, we've done, like, our total numbers are good. Our weapons offenses from 11 to 9, right? And mind you, some of those weapons offenses are things that we encounter. So a felon in possession of a firearm is a weapons offense, right? So some of these numbers are due to proactive work as well, not necessarily the shooting. Our auto thefts have gone down from 16 to 13. Yes, it's 3 fewer, but most of our auto thefts were occurring when people are number one, leaving their keys in their car and car running. So we've been working on that campaign in the colder months. But also people do the same behavior when they're running into the gas station at Speedway. And they're not necessarily non-residents or.
You know, Chief, I just thought of a revenue opportunity. When officers see a car like that with the keys in it and running, you should drive the car back to the police station and you can pay to get it back.
That's in the negatives because we get sued.
I'm just trying to keep the vehicle safe.
You know, just hoping.
Crashes, you hear me talk about crashes all the time. We have the straightest stretch of the Beltline and the most crashes on the Beltline. However, we went from 457 to 337 crashes, right? A lot of that, I would like to hope to think it's because of some of our enforcement activity that we're trying to do out there. Our injury count has gone down, and Jerry has noticed this, I'm sure as well, from 64 to 59 injuries in crashes. But I think the cool number is to see the trending of the traffic enforcement coming full circle with traffic enforcement is that's on an upward climb of the proactive traffic enforcement that your officers are doing out there. And, you know, I'm the boss, so I get the complaints and the concerns of we never see you do traffic on our block. I get it, and it's perspective, and that's important. But don't forget, and those of you who don't know, there's still that traffic dashboard that's out there. Just Google. At this point, I love it because there's been so many hits. All you have to do is Google Monona traffic. And that's one of the first things that comes up is the traffic dashboard that will literally plot all the traffic stops we conducted, the tickets that we've done on a map, right? And you can go in and individually click which one. You won't find Angela Davis's name, but you can click. You can click which one, like on your blog, and it'll tell you, it'll give you some details as to what that is. But, you know, I will tell you, and the mayor hasn't bothered me about this, but we write way more warnings than we do tickets. And the reason is, I love the fact that the officers have that discretion. Because it's important that they understand that each situation is unique, right? It's not easy to get a driver's license here. You can't if you're an undocumented person, right? There are barriers that are in place to get a driver's license in public education, right? In our area, right? So there are some persons, particularly a large volume of persons of color, who did not have the same opportunities as others. So I don't want that cop to automatically think that they have to write that ticket. So we write a lot of warnings because it's case dependent, but
I witnessed that in person, like, on my ride along. Like,
You want to talk about this?
well,
it was a ride along. It was a ride
No, I love that you're training officers to do that, because there was a situation where there was someone that didn't have a driver's license and the car wasn't insured. And was going through sort of a crisis. The officer spoke to them, and the officer made a determination that giving him a ticket for this would not make his life any better. So it encouraged him to go to DMV, take care of his situation, and said good evening. And that was a lot of compassion, you know, and empathy.
And thank you, and I'm glad you got to experience that, because I have these wonderful body cams that you all invested in, and I get to see this on the daily. And I've literally been in tears in my office, I shouldn't tell them this, but literally been in tears and watching them when they forget this thing is even on, and the compassion that they show every day. And so part of my job is also to pay attention to bias and unconscious bias, and making sure that they're using that discretion appropriately, even sometimes when they don't realize that they're not, right? Because of this real thing that's called unconscious bias. And I will tell you that they're using it appropriately. And I think they're recognizing their bias, and the data isn't skewed any which way and I don't know if that was a person of color or not.
It was, yes.
I think that every case is unique and different. As long as the officers have the tools on their belt, they have the knowledge and wherewithal and the history, and they understand and they apply that fairly, I think we're in a good spot here in Monona. And again, full circle again, my bad, but a missed opportunity from the DEIB that they didn't hear these stories, right? And that they didn't experience some of these things too. So again, I applaud the work that they're doing and they have done, and it's valuable work. But you know, if I can write my own narrative, I guess, on some of the work that your police department and fire is doing as well. So, okay, that is it.
Well, thank you. Any questions for the chief? None. Next scheduled meeting date is July 24th. And could I entertain a motion for adjournment?
Police and Fire Commission.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I would have spoken up if I had my.
Yes.
No big updates. Tom Stolper's still the chair this year. You're still stuck with me as the liaison to this committee.
That's
And we
good.
were happy to make a list to hire 2 new full-times.
And they've worked out well.
Awesome. So on that note, motion to adjourn.
I wish motion.
Second.
And all those in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
You let me turn this
Night,
off.
folks.
Good night.
Good night.
Let me stop recording before people talk about me here. Hold on.
Oh, there's a whole Facebook page dedicated to that.
I'm